You know, one of the most frustrating feelings that you can have in jujitsu is that sense that you're doing everything right, showing up, rolling hard, training hard, drilling, staying consistent, but somehow your jujitsu feels like it's stuck in the exact same place. So it's like all the effort that you're putting in isn't really paying off. Now, listen, you are not crazy for feeling that way, and you're definitely not alone. And I really want to dive into why training consistently doesn't always guarantee progress, especially if you're feeling stuck, and what you can do to really start moving forward again. So, over my 16 years of practicing and training jujitsu, the most common advice that I was told whenever I was stuck is just to keep showing up. That's what upper belts would tell me all the time. Or maybe I just needed to roll harder and then things would eventually start clicking, not to really worry about it. Speaking from experience, I've rarely ever seen that solution actually work. I think if it did, there'd be a lot more evidence and there'd be a lot more black belts out there roaming around. In the beginning of your jujitsu career, yeah, hard work is going to be the main solution or the main thing that you need to focus on because every class in jujitsu is very difficult. You're just trying to breathe. You're trying to not get smashed. And you're really just trying to make it to the end of the class or the end of the sparring rounds. But over time, what happens is that same effort starts giving you less and less in return. So it's like getting in your car, then you're flooring the gas pedal. And then what ends up happening is that you just end up driving in circles. So you wasted a lot of fuel, but you didn't really go anywhere. So it's not that you're lacking hard work, it's that your hard work is craving some type of direction. So the example that I like to use for this is like going to the gym and lifting weights. So if you were to show up to the gym and you did a different routine, a different rep count all the time, and you did a bunch of random exercises, you'd probably get a little bit fitter, but at some point, the benefits start to kind of peter out. You don't really see much improvement or much gain just from kind of this random training area. Eventually, you have to focus on a specific area and prioritize it in order to see any kind of meaningful gains. And that's what happens whenever we train jujitsu sort of in a random way. Also, my jujitsu doesn't have any direction, so it starts to kind of peter out all over. So that's what tends to happen when you train jujitsu sort of randomly without direction. You'll start to see your progress kind of not really gain in any one area. You might be hyper focused or have some interest for a short amount of time. Like, for example, 1 week, you might be focused on passing. The next week, you're focused on leg locks. And then the following week, you're obsessed with turtle attacks because someone caught you in that in your last training session. You're learning, but it's very scattered. You're putting in effort, but it's going in random directions. Effort without direction is just activity. So you're moving, but you're not actually building toward anything. After a few years, that scattered learning and randomness starts to catch up to you. And then you start feeling like you're just spinning your wheels or driving in circles. This is where a lot of students often hit what is known as the blue belt blues. And if you think about it, white belt is all about survival. So you're just learning and you're trying to understand how to stay alive. And then purple belt and above, that's really about developing and refining. You're trying to build systems for your game or you're adding layers to what you're already doing. But at blue belt, it's very, very messy. You're kind of in the middle of both of those. So you're exploring everything, but you're not really committing to any one thing. Don't get me wrong, learning like this is fun, but it's also a lot of chaos. And that chaos makes progress very difficult to see or notice. You're not stuck because you're lazy or you're unmotivated or that you're even unknowledgeable. You're plateauing because you haven't chosen what direction to grow your jiu-jitsu in yet. Here's some of the hardest truth that a lot of jiu-jitsu students just don't want to hear or don't want to accept. Training consistently alone gives you exposure, not growth. Training consistently is the absolute bare minimum that you need to improve. So if you continue to show up 3 or 4 times a week and you still feel like your jujitsu is in the same spot, there's a problem. That's not good. So you're most likely lacking direction. You have no feedback loop and you have no real metrics to actually measure your progress. So we tend to measure success or progress by the outcomes alone. So for example, like who tapped who, or when was our last promotion, or where did you place on the podium in your last competition. But those don't tell the full story of your development. And the best way to measure real progress is to track the development of your very own game, not just to notice the outcome of it. So I recommend that you do this by breaking it down into small parts that you can monitor over time. And this can actually help you identify what's actually working in your game and what's not, giving you what? Direction. Now, if you're like, okay, I get it. I would like more information. I would like more help doing this. That's exactly why I built something called my grip system or my grips framework. What that does, it breaks down building your jiu-jitsu game into 5 key component areas, which makes it really easy to identify which areas are stronger, which areas are weaker, and really where to focus your attention next. So AKA, if you're stuck, you can figure out why you're probably stuck, and that gives you some direction. Now, once you have it laid out like that, you stop guessing what to train and you actually start building your jiu-jitsu intentionally. So if you want to go deeper into that, I did a whole video that you can check out right here where I dive into the grip system a lot more detail, and it walks you through actually how to begin building your own jiu-jitsu game around that system. So how do you actually start using direction to get unstuck? Well, first, it all becomes to picking a focus. So please, I beg of you, start small. Pick only 1 or 2 things to focus on for your game. And then I beg you to focus on it longer than a training session or 2. Don't abandon it after trying it once or twice. So for example, let's say that you selected guard retention. I want you to make that your project for the next month. Every class, every roll, your goal is to test, fail, adjust, and learn within that space. So you'll start noticing some patterns. You'll see what tends to break down and what holds up and what timing actually works best for you. One of the most common pieces of pushback that I get from students about this is them really worried about the other parts of their game starting to fall apart or dwindle. Like, I can't focus on something because the other areas are gonna not be good, right? They're gonna get worse. But here's what's cool. Jiu-jitsu isn't exactly like strength training in this regard. So for example, if you worked really hard and benched all the time or worked on your chest to be able to achieve a 300-pound bench press, well, some other areas probably had to be sacrificed as well. Jiu-jitsu is kind of like a garden lattice. So everything will connect. So if you actually work on your guard retention, in a weird way, it actually significantly increases your guard passing. You're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Now, once you have picked your focus, you need to measure progress in a useful way. And the key word there is useful. So it's not useful to say, well, how many people did I tap in tonight's training? Instead, ask, how hard was it to submit people today? Did I have to use a lot of effort? Could I have done anything to make that process easier? So those small data points tell us so much more than the results ever could. And when you track those internal wins, those tiny progress points, you'll start to feel the momentum again. And you'll know you're getting better even without having to examine just the pure outcome. So what if you're still not sure what to focus on? Well, you should ask someone who really knows your jiu-jitsu game or who you train with a lot. You could ask your favorite training partner, an upper belt, or even your coach. Ask them, if I trained one area for the next month, do you have any suggestions for me? Another great option would be to do a private lesson with this specific mindset that you're trying to figure out what direction you're heading your jiu-jitsu in. And if you have a trusted coach or someone you can do a private lesson with, that's a really good, valuable time. They could probably evaluate you and give you some good ideas. Because progress doesn't always come from more training. It comes from having a more clear path. With that being said, I want you guys to start focusing on training smarter, not just harder. And I'll see you in the next one.